purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. No person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei.
Hello, welcome to Freethought Forum. I'm Catherine Fahringer, the producer of this show. I've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I'm still looking for guests. Today a friend of mine and I are going to discuss the tyranny of religion. And if any of you in the religious community are watching and you think we are saying things that aren't so, or that you would like to rebut, I have an open invitation to anyone to call me and offer to come on the program. Today, my friend Bill Rogers. Hello, Bill.
Hello, Catherine.
Thank you for coming. It's very sweet of you. We were going to discuss this religion, which we discussed the other night over the kitchen table, so let's see if it goes as well on camera as it did over a cup of coffee. I'd like you to tell me a little bit about your religious background, if you would.
It's a little confusing, and I think there's always been a part of me that really looked at religion from the outside. I could never quite believe in a lot of what I was taught, which was part Catholic and part Jewish in the beginning, and then some Protestant, sort of a liberal type of Protestant education.
You had the whole works, so.
Well, I never did become a Buddhist monk or a Hindu.
I understand Buddhism is something we really ought to look into. It's a much more serene sort of thing. I don't think they go around trying to impose their standards on everyone else.
It's also interesting to look at Buddhist countries today, their culture, because I think all culture comes from our religions. Or maybe a little bit of both, but you can walk down the streets of Tokyo without nearly the fear of being robbed or hit, or as you would in a big city here in this country, which is supposed to be a Christian nation.
Right.
Well, we
know, yes, we know a lot about peaceful Christianity, don't we?
I think so.
Well, we were going to, one of my other programs today, as you know, was going to be the case of the child here recently who was paddled by the school principal.
Right.
And I was going to have his father on and a social worker who had been working with the family, but unfortunately they had to go to court. But still, when you and I were talking about this the other day, you said, well, I think religion, as far as abuse of children, religion's had a lot to do with it, with which I heartily concur, because there's always that old spare the rod, spoil the child. And I notice in the papers, whenever there's a letter to the editor on spanking children in school, they trot that one out. But I want you to point out some of the things in particular.
Well, first of all, I think there's a tremendous myth about, you're constantly hearing advocates of Christian family values and any other religious family values. I cannot envision any mother, regardless of her religion, not loving and taking care of her child. But as we all know, that happens extensively in our culture.
It does.
Which is Christian. But, women seem to naturally love their children, regardless of what religion they are. Now, what kind of education or equipment they have, not physical equipment, but internal equipment, the ability to love and the ability to convey trust and the ability to convey security to a child, that has nothing to do with religion. If you look at the Christian faith or Judaism, or Mohammedanism, or Hinduism, and look at, and let's just take Christianity as an example, look at Jesus' example of how to treat family, Christian family values. He simply took his apostles away from their families.
I know, that's always surprised me. What are these fundies talking about?
Well, maybe they called up and got welfare, while, and if you look at the massive child abuse that is occurring in this country, again, in our Christian culture. If you look and read lines of this subject in the Bible, you will find that children are terribly abused. Women are terribly abused. The family system, family values, really doesn't even come out
I
in the
couldn't find
Bible.
it.
It isn't there,
I cannot
Catherine.
find it. I have looked, and I cannot find anything about family values. There's no encouragement of family values, because he even, he called his mother, I never heard him say mother, I don't think. He said woman, he addressed her at one point. Another time, well, he told his disciples, didn't he? Or maybe it was everyone in general, you can't be a follower of mine unless you renounce your families, leave your families, and it's
evidently a lot of teaching in the Christian Bible stresses that the only real necessary thing is to love Jesus and to obey his laws or the laws that have been created for him in his name. A lot of those, about 90% of the Bible has nothing to do with Jesus, by the way.
Yeah.
But and he certainly would not condone, if he were living today, what is going on in the Christian community.
Well, if he was really such an upright kind of guy, but I find him a little petty at times. The occasion when he wanted some figs and he came to the fruit tree, the fig tree, and it was out of season, and of course it wasn't bearing fruit, and he cursed it and withered it because it didn't have any. What did he expect? He certainly.
Well, I think it's indicative of the fact
like
that
a spoiled two-year-old kid.
All religion, regardless of what religion it is primarily into control, and it has been used for political powers and political means rather than spiritual ones. I mean, if Christianity really believed in good family values, why is there so much child abuse?
Yeah, good question.
I mean, why can't you go to the beach in Acapulco and leave your towel and radio on the beach while you go to the water?
Try it.
Let's not get into that, you know. But, you know, just another wonderful double standard, okay? Mm-hmm. And I think good family values are good family values regardless of religion or beliefs, or how much of a bigot you are or not.
Yeah, it seems to me the less of the religion that you have, the better you're apt to be. Some of this advice is really pretty bad. But
well, I want to point out that there's a lot of people out there who do go to Christian churches and Jewish temples and Muslims who are wonderful
people. Yes,
wonderful
people.
Parents. Okay. But it's not because of their religious belief.
No,
it's because
they are wonderful
love
people,
their
period.
children,
They didn't get their wonderfulness through the church. They simply are nice people and think because they're nice people congregate at churches, so that's where they'll go for their social life. Right. But there's some of the most dreadful things. I mean, here is one about burning your only daughter alive to fulfill a promise. There was a case.
if you really believe in the Bible, all women who are not virgins who want to get married will be stoned.
Yeah, they were pretty. They must have a lot of rocks in that country.
They did. Yeah. A lot of rocks, and they used them quite a bit. And it's too bad that the very people, like children and women and minority groups and anyone who has been made to feel bad about themselves in our culture, it's because of bigotry that is continually drawn out of that book because of certain interpretations. The other day I was watching a program with an evangelist preacher and stating that any man who wore an earring or any gay man would never go to heaven. I would really like to know, especially, you know, even in his bigoted, or I should say misinformed opinion, what earrings have to do with spirituality.
Yes.
I have not really figured that out.
That's
just a dumb example of what's taught in a lot of Christian churches, and the word is bigotry.
Yeah.
It's hate. It's well, whenever you can push someone's fear button, you know, they're liable to listen, and it's too bad that religions don't devote themselves to pushing people's love buttons.
Yeah, more often.
We wouldn't have wars, and we wouldn't have need for police to say, go this way, when if you were a loving person and someone, I mean, it's a little annoying because double standards seem to possess these people
Yeah, they seem to be able to live with the strangest assortment of
Set
things
of values,
that are, on this side this is okay, but over here something else that absolutely contradicts it
Look at the
okay too,
Catholic Church. Look at its history. Look at the number of homosexual bishops, popes, priests, and they are the very organization that seem to knock that lifestyle more than certainly, well, any other religion.
Well, I was wondering too, about a year ago, my group, Freethought Forum, you were in Washington at that time, I believe, and we went down to, what was it called, Gay Fiesta, and it was, we rented a little booth and we put out our literature, and it was to support the AIDS fund was what it was for. So we participated in that, and I just thought our literature, which is free thought, would be very much
welcomed.
in demand, and
it isn't,
I was very surprised that instead, in spite of the fact that the churches are condemning them and all sorts of terrible things are being said about gays and lesbians in the pulpit, nevertheless they seem to gravitate towards churches. If they can't find one that suits them, there's always somebody apparently who will set one up and call it, well, in California they had some special gay church, didn't they? And then here at this fiesta thing, here was this man walking around with Jesus Loves You on balloons, and, passed by our stuff and said, what is this? And we said, well, read it for yourself. Well, that wasn't exactly what he was looking for. But
I find it real curious.
I find it very strange.
It real curious that, well, as an example, when the Pope was here in San Antonio, I had two friends, they're lovers. They were both Mexican. They are both Mexican American and very Catholic, and they were all excited and getting outfits together to wear to go see the Pope. And I said, why? Why would you go see someone who represents an organization and very falsely accuses you of living in sin and da 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 da? Why do you worship this thing? Maybe there is a real human need, Catherine, to want
acceptance by Big Daddy. I mean, you have some idea that there's some...
Well, it's just like, why was Reagan so popular? It's because he was daddy.
Yeah,
and he's going to take care of everybody's problems. He's going to take care of everything, and all you have to do is, go out and do the laundry. You do not need to be responsible, which, of course, is what Christianity, I think, in a sense, is really all about. They will control, and you simply do what you're told. You don't have to think. You don't have to be curious. Oh gosh, I mean, you certainly don't have to be creative. Where would the world be?
You do when you're inventing a new church for yourself if the old one doesn't work out.
Yeah, that's pretty important.
Bill, is there some kind of innate, inborn need for people to worship? And if it can't be a god, they can have a god. They make up a god to worship, but they also worship people until they're disappointed. Reagan, I think, people. I had the most, what do you call them, crank phone calls over a one-sentence letter that was excerpted on 60 Minutes. You know how they have the follow-up? And it had to do with some statements that Reagan had made the previous week about AIDS, and said, we can hate the disease, but we don't hate the people who are afflicted. And he was getting on the bandwagon for AIDS. Well, he'd been in office for 8 years and done nothing, nothing. And so I said, well, Reagan could make the Guinness Book of Records for the latest learner of the year, or the slowest learner of the year, or something like that. And I got as soon as that thing shot on the screen and off, I had 4 phone calls just like that. And they were all mad because of what I said about Precious Reagan. So there you are. I mean, he was next to the Pope, I guess.
But to answer your question, yes. I think, and, I'm not a psychologist. I haven't studied a lot of I've studied a lot of philosophy, but it seems that mankind, people, the species that we know as mankind, do have a lot of fears. You know,
It's scary out there.
It's scary out there. Yeah. And I think, you know, the minute we're born, we start crying because we're really terrified. And, you know, that's why we have mothers. And that's why there should be love and nurturing and this conveyance of trust between another human being, you know, to the newborn. And, of course, I'm not a father either, but I really happen to love kids.
Yeah.
I just think they're wonderful because they're innocent.
I know.
They're curious. They're imaginative. They're very hungry to learn.
Until it's all destroyed.
Well, until they go to church and they're told to tote the line and put on their blinders and
stop
you know,
being creative, stop thinking.
And stop thinking and
this is what I tell you.
This is all you need to
know.
know. You do not need to think. You know, but people that have been oppressed, like women in our society. I mean, it's, you know, we sit here with women that have voted all their lives, as an example, okay? And we may take those kind of rights for granted. We may take things like the single mother for granted and her tremendous efforts to raise children and to be a good citizen and to give the kids the love and the things that they need. Well, of course, daddy's out the bar drinking. You know, he doesn't have any responsibility whatsoever. And it's real unfortunate that in our culture, men are always the ones that seem to get off easy. But you also have to realize that they're the ones that runs our churches and they're the ones that wrote that book.
You know,
and it was all done for their benefit and talk about who's really insecure in our culture. I'm afraid it's the guys, you know.
You want a cook and a nanny and a mommy, and they're going to wrap her all up in one package, and that's it.
And make her a second-class citizen.
Of course.
But my point was, all of these groups, gays, blacks, the Chicano, the Mexican, or the Hispanic, and women. Women have been persecuted by any major religion.
Yeah.
Of course, it's easy if you believe what I believe, and that is men created religions, you know, to enforce what they felt would be.
Yes.
I don't think anybody ever sat down and wrote a line in that Bible really thinking it was going to create hardships for people. But if you just look at our world, every major battle, every missile, I mean, has all been created to protect us in what we feel is right and what surely must be you're wrong. I mean, when the French and the Catholic Church went to Vietnam, I don't think they ever envisioned the horror that the mixture of two cultures and of course, you know, we were sitting over there, the Western world was sitting over there with their big plantations and robbing those poor people. And, you know, when they finally got tired of it, they wanted us out. And, of course, we were partly there from the very beginning because we support the Catholic Church and we support this culture because we're part of it.
Stephen Mumford, this one is on the Vatican and population growth and national security, but he is also very interested in the fact, and I believe he mentions it in there, that the Catholic Church was instrumental in getting that Vietnamese war thing off the ground. I mean, it's just about kind of
well, but you have to also
down.
realize that the Catholic Church really believes they were over there saving lives because those people weren't Catholic, okay?
Yeah.
But what the Catholic Church is going to have to understand is that I'm not going to listen to them. You know, I'm not going to listen to bigotry. I'm not going to listen to things like women are second-class citizens and that are submissive and
would you tell me
awful by
something?
nature.
If the church thinks of women as second-class citizens, why is it that all the men in the fancy religions like the Roman Catholic and the Greek Orthodox, they all wear dresses? Had you thought about that?
No.
I have, and it really blows me away.
Maybe they're ashamed of their legs. Part of it, Catherine, is that there is a
they're envious of women. I think it's uterine envy. I do.
Well,
Freud talked about penis envy. I think it's uterine envy. Look at the abortion thing.
Yeah. I think it could be envy, but I also think it could be a horrible mistrust and a fear. And why give someone so much power if they're not afraid? I mean, why are women put down in religions if men weren't basically afraid of them? I mean,
terrified they're going to get out of the kitchen and quit having babies. Holy smoke, get them back in there.
well, women really should know their place. I mean, you should be in the kitchen. You know? I mean, but if you listen to the Bible, if you read the Bible, you know, you're really inferior.
I know.
And
dirty.
And
Bad.
unclean and I mean, of course, if women were wonderful and the things that they truly are, of course, and loving and all those things, if women were really that as a significant entity in the church, there would never have been a need for the Virgin Mary. There would have been nothing wrong with a normal birth. But, you know, what the Catholic Church is saying, in essence, is sex is bad. And what better way to keep people coming back to you by making them feel bad about themselves so they can come back to you for their salvation.
To feel good for a few minutes, to go back and feel bad, to come back and...
Right. If Christianity really taught what it says it teaches, there would not be there would be no need for churches.
I wish it did.
There'd be no need for governments or police or any of that if they believed what they really teach. And of course they don't. It's all a double standard, and all you have to do is read the violence and the death and the murders and the horrible stuff that's in that Bible.
I know.
I mean, it's shocking, but you know, you never hear the evangelist on television talk about...
No, they don't read those parts.
No, they don't read those parts.
And they talk about us taking verses out of context, but actually the context of the Bible is rather choppy anyway. I mean, people are just suddenly, there he is, and there they are, and I mean, it's...
well, it's like the incest of Cain, and I mean, that whole... It's really repulsive.
That's a sticky wicket. Now, you have to admit that. But how did they ever get around that anyway? Where did these other wives for the boys come from?
Well, first of all, you don't doubt their word. You don't doubt what they say. You don't think about what they have.
I'm obsessed with it. No, I'm only kidding.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, I mean, it's someday maybe someone... I mean, I have often envisioned, you know, someone from outer space coming to our planet and having a Christian and a Jew and a Hindu and a Muslim and a Buddhist sit there and say, okay,
you got it
who's
all
lying?
Wrong. Yeah, you got it all wrong. All of you got it wrong.
But you know, I mean, can you imagine who's lying?
Yeah, somebody's got to be.
Someone has to
a
be
lot of people
not telling the truth. And I'm simply submitting that all religions, even though they were intended to be good, okay, have really been terribly abused. They are, and probably always will be, a political force in our society.
Oh, the Catholic Church is terribly political now. It's, I'm really concerned. I mean, this hiring of a public relations firm to take care of the public and kind of sway them around to the getting back to the anti-abortion stance. They're trying to trump that up now, and spending over, what was it, over $5 million
Well, I wish
on
that very same group of people would spend that $5 million or $5 billion or whatever it is, not on so much abortion, but you know, that's the same group of people, Catherine, who are the people that will take those very people that were saved from abortions, send them to a war like Vietnam, have them all shot up and call it honor.
Yeah, I know.
Where is the real, true love of our faith, of Christianity? And I say our faith as a cultural thing. I mean, do we still... I mean, look what we did to the American Indian. Those were good Christian peoples. Look what we did to the black slaves. Those were good Christian folks that did it. The Inquisition, the Crusades, the burning of the Library of Alexandria. Where do they get their information that it's a love-based entity? Where do they get that?
I'm baffled. I really am. I just am baffled.
Well, you are, and a lot of people are. And I talk to folks who I know are churchgoers and stuff, and a lot of them say, well, I don't know anything about that.
I know, most of them, the sweet ones we were talking about, they're really good people.
There's
and
there are.
A lot of my friends go to church, and they're lovely people. But they're not obsessed with their religion. They're into their lives, and they lead nice
They're good
lives.
human beings.
Yes, they are. And I don't know why they feel, I suppose, from the imposition of a religion upon them by their families and by the culture. Because you know what you amount to. You could run for office as an atheist or an agnostic, or even as the tag Freethinker wouldn't go over.
Well, I think a lot of people, in addition to having the sociability of churches, I mean, if you're a businessman, it is very wise for you to be a member of a certain church
very.
just for business connections. Now, that has nothing to do with religion. But a lot of people like to recognize themselves as Christians because it has connotations of being good.
Yes, and how often have you heard pillar of the community, that
Right.
sort of thing?
Yeah, well, those are good Christian people. And, of course, we never talk about the fact that the mafia are all Catholics. All of these drug lords in Colombia are Catholics. The mafia in this country, I mean, those are all good Italian names. They're good Catholics. Hitler was a good Catholic in good standing with his church.
Well, that's another
the day
thing
he
that
died.
puzzles me. You excommunicate a woman because she works at a reproductive services clinic. The church excommunicates her, but Hitler was a Catholic till the day he died. Now, whether he considered
In good
himself...
standing, you have to add that.
But,
Catherine.
well, good standing because he was never excommunicated. Never.
Well,
ever.
but the Pope was also thinking, hey, what happens if Nazism really does win and take over? You know, he couldn't destroy the church.
Well, that would be a little nervous, wouldn't it? We've
Yes.
got to stay kind of on the fence there because...
And tell me we're not
it
political.
might be dangerous. We were going to talk a little bit, jumping around wildly
I
like
know.
a
Yeah, I'm
flea
sorry.
from dog to dog. Yes, but I did want... We were talking about the attitude of the Catholic Church about everyone being, being anti-abortion and being, so they call pro-life, and yet they will make these people have all these children. By make them, I say, you make them if you make them feel guilty about having sex with, by using some sort of birth control. That is, it creates guilt, and they won't.
Well, you have to realize, Catherine, the Catholic Church works. Its entire essence is guilt. It simply wouldn't it simply wouldn't work if it were a love base. They don't teach love. They teach guilt. They teach shame. They teach prejudice. They teach bigotry. And, if you run around with a lot of fear-based kind of values, it's a perpetual, it just continues and continues. You teach hate, people are going to continue to hate. If you teach good and you teach love and you teach especially self-love, I mean, can you imagine if every person on this planet was capable of taking care of themselves and was responsible for themselves?
Wow.
Well, wouldn't it be a wonderful, neat place to live? I mean, you could actually drive down the street without some drunk hidden. But let's, I mean, that's sort of utopia in extremes.
Fun to
because
think
the
about,
world will
though.
never be.
I just wish we'd get a little nicer right here and now, and utopia, I guess that's a dream. But we could, by exercising all that is the best in us, be nicer. And let's use our heads when we're thinking about bringing more babies into the world when we can't take care of the ones we have. That's unfortunate.
Well, not only can we not take care of the ones we have, but
We're abusing
our
them.
arrogance
Yes.
as wonderful beings is destroying the planet. It will
Gail,
take
you're-
care of itself,
Yeah,
Catherine.
you're not going to believe this, but we are
Time's up.
running out of time.
I believe
So
it.
I think probably we're good for at least 6 more programs, and if we can get anyone out in the religious community to come and join us, we would love to have you. There'll be an address and a telephone number at the end of the program. And so for now, bye from Freethought Forum.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny